Thailand has made a progress. With respect to the first factor, in the digital talent, has been a lot of effort made at increasing investment in education, but also increasing the digital content in schools and universities. With respect to infrastructure, Thailand actually is one of the best countries in the world, at least in the best 20-25 countries in the world. This is because an amazing improvement in digital infrastructure in the last couple of years. And finally, we also see an improvement in business attitudes towards digitalization. We need to preserve the ability of a big part of the population to use technology. So it's very important to educate. Just to complete my digression here, Denmark did that. So Denmark is a country that decided to educate their people, including the old ones, on the benefits of the technology.
Sawadee, welcome to our special talk on advancing Thailand's digital competitiveness by the Office of the National Digital Economy and Society Commission in cooperation with the Thailand Management Association or TMA. I'm Chawarat Yongjiran, and today is a very special episode where we're going to talk about the competitiveness of Thailand when compared to the rest of the world with a very special person. He is the Professor Arturo Bris, the Director of World Competitiveness Center of IMD. Sawadee.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
Oh, good to see you overall. I think everyone is very interested about the latest reports coming from IMD, where this past year has shown that Thailand has moved up one rank from the year before to 38. What has contributed to this rise?
Yes, and notice also that Thailand, in any case, has been increasing overall in the last 4 to 5 years. So it is definitely making a progress. Just to clarify how we measure our ranking, for us, digital competitiveness of a country refers to the ability of the nation to facilitate digital transformation at all levels: government, corporate, and individual. And then there are these 3 dimensions that we measure. One is the quality of the digital talent in the country. Second is the quality of the digital infrastructure, including the legal infrastructure. And finally, we measure attitudes towards digitalization, both at the individual and the corporate level. In all these 3 dimensions, Thailand has made a progress. With respect to the first factor, in the digital talent, has been a lot of effort made at increasing investment in education, but also increasing the digital content in schools and universities. With respect to infrastructure, Thailand actually is one of the best countries in the world, at least in the best 20-25 countries in the world. And this is because an amazing improvement in digital infrastructure in the last couple of years. And finally, we also see an improvement in business attitudes towards digitalization. The corporate sector in Thailand is very agile, and we see very positive attitudes towards digital transformation.
I think that it's very interesting and kind of very encouraging indeed during this time where we've seen a lot of different challenges coming our way. From the IMD's perspective, has there been a specific country that we can look at as an example which has displayed very good progress in developing its competitiveness, and what can be learned from this country?
Yes, obviously, if you look at the crude data, there are countries that have improved significantly in digital competitiveness, like, for example, China or Estonia. I think for Thailand, which is definitely a much smaller country than China, the lessons that can be learned are from smaller countries, such as Denmark or Estonia as well. And Denmark in particular is, for example, today, the most digitally advanced or competitive country in Europe. And I think there is an important lesson that probably we can explore further. But I think the key to digital transformation in Denmark, as well as, for example, in Estonia or in Israel or in other countries of similar size, is that these countries have created significant partnerships between the private and the public sector to push for this digital transformation. Let me give you a very simple example. There is a digital identity program in Denmark, as there is one in India or in Estonia. The program in Denmark was sponsored by the government, but implemented by the private sector. And it was the private sector, the one who provided the technology. So these partnerships, I think, are key for the digital transformation of a country. And I think it's something that Thailand can import as an idea.
I strongly, definitely support what you're saying. And I mean, we've heard of it before, but this is even more proof, isn't it? That, one sector cannot go alone. You cannot rely on one part of the country, such as the private sector or the public sector, to do it by themselves. But in most cases, as you've mentioned, both have to do it at the same time, and it's not only going to save time, but also it's going to save money. And we've seen that there has been an urgency for the various big stakeholders to work together, especially during these past 2 years with COVID-19. The pandemic has accelerated the development of technology, for sure. We've witnessed a change of consumer behavior that has moved towards a more digital world. How should each country be more aware of this change, and how can they be ready to, I know it's a bit too late to say right now, but how can they be ready to be updated in time and also to support this change?
Yes, you're totally right. I think in that, especially the pandemic times have shown us the importance of technology and how people use technology, particularly in making purchases and online shopping and so on, but also in communication, remote work, and so on. I think one key issue that worries me a lot, and when I'm thinking about the overall competitiveness of countries, not just the digital competitiveness, is the importance of inclusion. Meaning, to what extent, especially in countries with a big divide between rural and urban population, like in Thailand, we include everybody in this digital transformation. I go back to the most representative countries that I have mentioned earlier. These countries realize that if you want to transform the country, you need to educate people in digital transformation. And I think this is the key. Very often we are blinded, for example, when we look at China, by the amazing speed at which some of its cities have been transformed. But we also forget that in the western part of the country, there is a huge rural population, probably the majority of the country, that is not included in the digital transformation. And for Thailand, I think this is also important. And let me give you some data in our rankings. We measure as I mentioned earlier in our third factor, the attitudes toward digital transformation in a country. And we divide between individual attitudes and corporate attitudes. In business agility, corporate agility, Thailand ranks number 34 out of 64 economies this year. So it ranks, at the top of the table, more or less in the first half. However, when we go to individual attitudes towards digital transformation, that includes, for example, possession of e-tablets, participation in e-commerce, use of, for example, internet tools, the country ranks number 53 out of 64. And I think that would be the warning side. I think that for digital transformation to be inclusive, we need to preserve the ability of a big part of the population to use technology. Think, for example, what happens in many countries, and especially societies as old as the European society where I live, where there is a big segment of the population, those above 60, 65 years of age, that they don't have a clue how to use technology because they have never been trained well. And then we're excluding that part of the population. So it's very important to educate. Just to complete my digression here, Denmark did that. So Denmark is a country that decided to educate their people, including the old ones, on the benefits of the technology. Estonia did something similar, but in Estonia, education was a result of the digital transformation of the country. So essentially, a 65-year-old could see the benefits of technology, and then she decided to educate herself to understand how the technology works, because she realized that, for example, she could get a prescription for her medicine digitally. So those are some of the tools that countries have used.
Yeah, I think definitely we're seeing an exciting transformation of not only those of the newer generations, and I agree with you. Definitely here in Thailand specifically, we do have a sort of a gap that we still do have between the urbanized areas and those that are still quite based on agricultural land and those, and also our senior generation as well. But what's so amazing that we're as in Southeast Asia is that we're seeing people leapfrogging as well into the mobile platform and seeing more of that come into play, especially during COVID-19, with a lot of seniors having to get into the platform because they know they need to do certain things, like, for example, reserve a slot for their vaccine. With that said, of course, there are countries that are slow in the digital transformation still, and this has an impact on the world. How is this impact? How is it going to impact us overall in the long term with countries still lagging behind? And do you have any advice for them in addition to what you just said about education?
Yes, but surprisingly, you may think that the countries that are slow at digital transformation are those who are poorer countries or less developed countries. And in fact, this is not the case. That if you look at Africa, for example, or some of the emerging economies in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam or the Philippines, since they don't have a legacy before of a certain infrastructure in the country, they have moved fast into digital transformation. Okay, think about, as an example, banking services in Africa. Most people didn't have access to finance in Africa before. Now, once you introduce technology, people jump immediately into technology solutions. In Europe or in the US, in contrast, where there is already a legacy system, the bricks and mortar economy, people tend to be more reluctant to adopt technology, interestingly. That's why Thailand or China or Indonesia move faster. They are more agile than the slower countries like Europe and the United States. And of course, this has to do with the population structure as well. So it should not be a worry for you in Thailand, because don't think that you are the slower movers. You look at our rankings last year, which are the ones that we published last on October 2021, the fastest region in terms of digital competitiveness is Asia. That includes China, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines. That region outpaces Europe and the United States by far in improvements in digital transformation. And as you have discussed, Thailand is a good example of that.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel so good now. But obviously, there's still much more to go. Before we end our talk, do you have any last comments, of what is to come for as we start this new year for Thailand and the rest of the countries here in the region in terms of how to go about with our developing our competitiveness?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me state my hope that I can go to Thailand soon. That conditions allow me to finally travel to Thailand. That I definitely miss. Obviously, hopefully we're entering into a new era in the post-pandemic times when we see that the restrictions are being lifted in many countries of the world. And I think that technology is here to stay. So there is a certain degree of digital transformation that the pandemic has accelerated, and the question is, how do we take advantage of what we have done? And Thailand, for example, as I said, has significantly improved its digital infrastructure in the last years. So I think more effort have to be done to put that technology at use. And I think now it is time to embark in the longer term actions, like, for example, the education system, inclusion policies, increasing corporate culture towards digital transformation, and also facilitating the regulation to do so. So my hope is that Thailand ranked number 38 last year in our ranking. My hope is and my belief is that in 2022 and 2023 the country will be doing much better.
Oh, thank you so much for being with us here online. I know you're not here in the kingdom. We are looking forward for you to come back. Definitely very encouraging indeed to hear that we've progressed and there is still room to do more. And there's no boundaries to how we can go about it, especially at a time where we've proven that we can still proceed with challenges such as COVID-19. It's just very important to, lower that gap between those who are slower and those who are faster, and also to work together with all the important stakeholders such as the government and the private sectors. Thank you so much, Arturo, Bris, the Director of the World Competitiveness Center of IMD. We hope to see you soon. ขอบคุณมากค่ะ And this has been the episode about digital competitiveness. It's the last one. So we hope you have benefited from our episodes, and the progress that we've seen has been very enlightening, and we hope that we have also encouraged all of you, our viewers, today. Until next time, สวัสดีค่ะ